Welcome to the Coaching Edge podcast with your co-hosts, Dr. Steve Jeffs and Erwin de Grave. Each episode, we bring you expert guests and transformative coaching insights. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Coaching Edge podcast with your co-host, Dr. Steve Jeffs, and myself, Erwin de Grave. And today we have the pleasure to speak to Sandra Stocks. Hello, Sandra. How are you doing?
Hello, Erwin. Very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, thank you. Very well. And Steve, of course, welcome as well. So, Sandra, we could try to introduce yourself, but I'm 100% sure you know yourself much better than we do. So who's Sandra? How did she got in coaching? What does she do in coaching nowadays?
Okay, so what do I do? So I'm a coach and NLP practitioner. I'm also an energy worker and energy teacher trainer. So I can also teach people how to do healings, give healings, work with energy. So I've been doing energy work for 30 years, coaching for 20 years. I'm also an author of a #1 bestseller, and I'm also a podcast host myself, one with my daughter.
Ooh.
So that's a 2-generational conversation of living your hell yes. How do you live your hell yes? It's important to me that people find a way or even start to investigate, how can I live my hell yes? I think that's in their hell yes, not somebody else's, but their hell yes. So, and also another podcast, which is Sandra in Your Pocket, where I kind of channel wisdom coming through, so that we don't always just come from the logical brain, but we also come from that inner being part of us that is the wiser part of us, which we tend to shut down, especially through fear. So that's kind of what I do. So I got into it by absolute accident. It wasn't something healing. No, I felt absolutely compelled to be a healer and to do energy work. I kind of knew that from the age of 6. When my mum and dad, I was 6 years old, I realized that people die at that age, when you're 6. And I said to my mum and dad, I know you're going to die, And they said, no, we're not, darling. We're not. And well, you are. So I said, no, Mum and Dad, you are going to die, but please don't come back and visit me. And I just had this really clear, you'll want to come back, and don't do that. And they said, oh, darling, don't worry, we're not going to die anyway. And it was from that age that I realized, there was more. So the energy work, that was just automatic, kind of intrinsic, kind of just, but the coaching I kind of fell into, and it was very much, I had very much lived a life of shoulds throughout my life, which probably resulted in 2 marriages that I kind of did that I didn't really want to do. And you kind of learn along the way. And that's kind of what really got me into authenticity coaching, authenticity and mindset coaching. So that's kind of how it all started.
Awesome. When you say authenticity coaching, like how do you define authenticity in the work that you do?
For me, energy is entwined in everything, right? Everything. And when I coach, it's also including intuitive coaching and energy work. And authenticity is the 2 parts of you. We've got this personality ego, of course we do, because we want to move forward, we want to take action, we want to do all of that, but we've got this larger part of us as well that's full of wisdom and is guiding you from that inner voice. But people shut down the inner voice. They look external instead of internal. And my work really is to support people to not just hear the inner voice. I think we can all do that, but it's embracing it and then finding and having the courage to move forward with it. And I think a lot of people at the moment are living in fear because they look externally. And then it's very much a limited paradigm of what you can create because you're in fear. So whereas if you can trust that voice within a little bit more, you've got more of a chance of not being swept away while there's fear around the world.
So how can people connect with their inner self if they're really looking on the outside and because and listening to your inner self, because is it the right voice that's talking to me? Is it not my mind talking to me?
That's a really interesting one, isn't it? Well, okay, so we know what the brain does, don't we? We know that the brain wants to keep us safe. We know that. So the brain's always going to go down the limitation route. Of course it is. It wants to keep you safe. And, that's really cool so that you don't put your hand in a fire. I'm grateful for that. But, when you want to move forward into something that is for you, when you get that gut, you really want to move forward into something, and it feels right for you. But in that split second, you either take the action or you listen to the doubt that comes in from the brain. The brain will always give you the doubt or the let's question this because we're not really sure. The amygdala kicks in and we're not really sure that you actually really want to do that. So let's not do that. Let's keep you here. But you've just had that gut emotional response about something you really want to do. And that's your connection to your inner being. It's that. And your inner voice would never ever say to you, you've got that gut response. I'll tell you what, step back. Come on, just step back for a little bit. Why don't you reflect on it? Listen to them. It just wouldn't do that. It wouldn't be negative. It would be so positive. It would be, but it's whether or not you've already drowned that out with the doubt and the fear that comes from the brain. And then, as we know, everything's momentum, right? So once you start getting those thoughts, whether they're positive or negative, it's very likely that the momentum is going to build in that same way. So if you've kind of allowed the brain to kick in within 2 to 3 seconds, it's very likely you're going to build momentum because you've already built a neural pathway and a habit on that.
So what you're saying is, if you have those gut feelings, and that the brain could be the engine to move this much quicker forward.
I think the brain could either help you to move it forward or it will stop you because it's out of your comfort zone. So the brain then could hold you back. What I always say to people is when you get that gut instinct, how does it feel, right? Because you feel that kind of excitement at the beginning and you feel like, oh, this feels really good before the brain kicks in. It's kind of remembering what that feeling, what's the emotion, because your emotions are truly you. I don't believe really any of our thoughts are really just uniquely us, not from the brain. We filter too much. We absorb so much that our thoughts aren't uniquely ours, but our emotional system, our emotional response is. And I think, I'm going to say I know that the emotional system connects you to the truth of who you are.
I love this world of, I'm a big thinker, but I also, that energy is so powerful. And I believe it's not only that gut sense that is important, but it's a combination of both that makes it even more powerful.
Sure.
So, and it's being conscious about, hey, the mind is going to be there, but in what way do you look at it, and in what way it's going to help you to be supporting you instead of being against you.
That's exactly it, Erwin. Yeah, for sure. And I think the way that you can keep on track with that more is to always have that initial emotional feeling as your guide so that the brain can then, you can kind of then try if you can to convince the brain that you're okay, you're safe. This is definitely in my stretch zone. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I get that. I really do understand that, brain. But I'm okay because this feeling feels really good. Now, once the brain hops on board, which could take a while, but once the brain hops on board, absolutely. The brain is here as an engine to help us move forward for sure, if we can allow it to move in that direction.
I see it as like the gut feeling is what you need to do, and the brain is more how I'm going to get there, and is really going to look at the steps to say, okay, that's what you want, but okay, how are we going to do this? And stay positive and look at, okay, what are the steps that I should be taking that, because sometimes there is this gut feeling you want to go that way, but you also need to look at your environment, what is going to influence, and you need to find the right balance to be able to get there so that it's supportive and it's not going to interrupt or break down.
Okay, so that's where energy comes in for me, because I believe that there's no shoulds. So is this the should way, the how should way, or what way feels inspirational to me? Because I do believe sometimes shoulds sometimes don't feel inspirational. And there's a difference between motivational, which is how the brain can do the how sometimes, and that's great. It's motivational, but motivation will only get you so far. It's inspirational. It's kind of like, well, what inspires me to get to the end result? Because you don't want anything coming in and taking you off piste, so to speak. And if you've got something inspirational that's supporting you to move forward, there's even more of a momentum to move you towards where you want to get to. Sorry, I was just
no, go ahead.
I could see that when I was helping people to lose weight, right? They would have, say, motivation of a doctor's letter, a doctor saying, you know, you've got to lose weight or you're going to die or whatever. And you would think that would be enough. You'd think that would be enough motivation to get them to the end result. Very rarely would a doctor's diagnosis get them to the end. Very, very rarely did that ever happen. Usually the fallout rate would be within 6 to 8 weeks. Just didn't hold it for them. Just really that motivation didn't overcome the habit that they'd got themselves into. But something inspirational, now this might sound really weird, but me rocking up at the front of the class wearing jeans and looking whatever I was looking like, weirdly, that was inspirational, right? They had that vision. It wasn't motivational, it was inspirational. And that inspiration, it wasn't just me, it would have been other things going on. I'm just using that as an example. That inspiration would get them to the end. Motivation, even a doctor's letter was never enough. So the logic of the brain was, look, you know what, the doctor's saying I could die if I don't lose this weight. That's the logic of the brain. It wasn't enough. But the feeling, I feel really good when I get the inspiration over here, that was more of the drive.
Interesting. There's a practical paradox that I see in how what you're speaking to is applied. On one hand, I can see that, and I think that's a really great example, that the one that you just shared, doctor's letter versus a compelling inspirational vision. We know this. You know, it's one of the biggest reasons that medicine doesn't solve the problems it's supposed to. It's not that the treatment's not there, it's that people don't follow the treatment plan. So I think it's a really great example that we can all sort of connect with. And yet at the same time, there's these two roles that I see of feelings. The feeling that you said as the driver, so I can tell it's not an I should, it's my voice, there's that authenticity. This is a compelling path for me to listen to that. And yet there's also at least what we describe as feelings of, well, in the example with the doctor's letter, getting up and exercising or not having that piece of cake, there's all sorts of feelings that go, one more piece of cake. And the reason I bring this up, I'm reading a book about accountability that says actually have the discipline to follow the plan. Don't let your emotions make the decisions along the way. So can you sort of separate out how we often use emotion to justify staying in that safe space versus when we can connect to it as energy and drive towards where we want to go and how we want to grow?
Well, that's a question, Steve. Yeah. Okay, then. Well, yeah, I mean, when you see it in that kind of situation with eating, you know, we hear this all the time, don't we? Comfort eating and things like that, you know, when our emotions are on at a low level, you know, and there is an emotional scale, you know, we know this from David Hawkins, and, you know, we know all that. We know that there's an emotional scale. So, and we fluctuate, don't we? You know, even throughout a day, we can fluctuate on the frequency of emotions that we're on. So it really does depend as well, I believe, on where are you in relation to that particular topic. So for a lot of people, as an example, with eating or whatever, that's quite emotional because there's stuff there. They want to look different, feel different, whatever. It's all tied up with so much stuff. So it's kind of the way I would, well, when I was helping people to lose weight, the way I would kind of look at it is, how would you feel when you're at the end of the journey? Because I know what you feel while you're in the journey, while you're here right now at the beginning of the journey. And I get that. But how would you feel if you actually did get through the journey and you got to the end of it? Now, that's tangible because you kind of know, hopefully, if you've either been healthier before, or you know that's a real goal of yours, you just don't know how to get there, you can kind of feel some form of excitement about that. Now, my ideal would be, okay, well, let's stay as focused as we can on those feelings, acknowledging the feelings that you're in now, because they're real, but that everything is transient, which it is, whether we like that concept sometimes or whether we don't, everything is transient. So how can we move you towards, or feeling more in that better feeling place more of the time?
It's moving from, that's the question that comes up in my mind is, and that's what you're trying to explain, how to move someone from a motivation to an inspiration.
Yeah, because just think, when you're motivated at the beginning of something like weight loss, as we're on this topic, something like weight loss, sometimes it can feel way too big, right? Way too big. You know, when I was on my weight loss journey, I had 23 kilos to lose. So we were doing it in stones and pounds at that point in London, and I couldn't do that. Was too big. That was like, whoa, kind of back off. That's way too big. So for me, it was every 7 pounds, right? Every 7 pounds. And then every time I lost a 7 pound, it was, wow, this is feeling good. This is kind of feeling exciting. I can kind of feel the difference that this is making. This feels exciting. But it's that first bit that is the tough bit, because you're still in the old story, and old stories can really keep us stuck. Whereas if you start to journey onwards, you're starting to develop a new story. And then when you can stand in that new story, well, one, you feel way more empowered. And when you're more empowered, you feel more inspired. You're self-inspiring at that point.
Yeah, the power of that story is super powerful. It's definitely what keeps us stuck. We don't get stuck in circumstance. We're getting stuck in the story we tell ourselves around that circumstance. The other thing I love about what you said is, it's a topic question. For us as coaches, we've got to get clear on the topic, but the topic isn't just the goal, tangible, the weight loss target, the revenue target, the whatever the kind of target outcome externalization is. But you ask this question, how do you want to feel at the end?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the same question, but on that emotional level. And I think setting emotional goals is really important. And the way you asked the question provided a very clear contrast. Well, if this is where I want to be, well, is that where I'm already? What's the gap here?
Yep.
And then, in relation to my question, I can start to go, well, it's not about the feelings, it's about what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And just because it's familiar doesn't mean that it's what I'm wanting. And that's okay, because now I can sort of measure my progress towards what it is that I want outcome, but also in terms of feeling. And I think it's a really good inclusion for us to consider as, well, coaches for ourselves and our clients.
Yeah, I think it's really important, because if we don't include how you feel, you can drop in that gap, right? Because, okay, so you start here, your goal is over there. And, we focus on the goal for the clients because that's where they want to get to. So that's really cool. I get that. But there's so much stuff in between there and there, the two ends of the stick, right? There's so much in between. And a lot of that, especially I would say in today's society, a lot of that is emotional.
Absolutely.
Because there's so much going on, right? And because, I don't know, there's so much social media and whatever, and so much comparison and all.
What really showed up as you were speaking is I hate the phrase, but almost the accidental self-sabotage that can emerge if we don't address this. And what I was picturing, you spoke about emotional eating before. Well, hey, I can exercise, I can do this, I can do that, but actually me motivating, pushing, or driving myself out of the comfort zone creates additional emotional stress, which needs to be dealt with and managed. And what are my current stress management strategies? Well, I'm eating, and so suddenly I've got 5 good days, and then I'm off the wagon, and now we've got this whole back and forth, up and down, and then the shame and the guilt, the self-judgment, the blame, and all of those things that can start to emerge. And actually, what we've done is by not paying attention and not addressing it, we've set ourselves up by pushing ourselves too far or driving ourselves in a way that doesn't align, to your point, with who we are and how we can create the success we're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes we're so busy, like you say, fighting that middle bit, the I did it, no, I haven't done it, no, and then beat yourself up, and then the cortisol kicks in, and then the stress levels rise, and ironically with weight loss, the cortisol kicks in, so the brain mimics the cravings, and then you're just going to put on weight anyway, right? So it really is a sabotaging pattern, and that's why we are more than this brain. We are more than this brain, and it's important to me in my coaching anyway, and this is no judgment on anybody else's coaching, but it's really important to me in my coaching that you take into account the whole, the brain, the emotions, the energy, that's the whole of you. And I think when we don't take into account the whole, there's a lot that you're kind of, not you, anyone, that we're not addressing. And I think that can sabotage people actually really living and experiencing the life they really want to live. And I mean, really, come on, why are we here, right? Because, you can say, I want the house, or I want the car, or I want the career, or I want the this, or I want the that, or whatever. You can say all of that. But why do you want it? Why do you actually want those things? Probably because I'm assuming, you're going to feel really good at the end of it, or you're going to feel joyful and happy and self-fulfilled, maybe, I don't know, but it's the journey along the way. Because if that's how you want to be feeling, why, I think part of my work is to help people feel that way before they've actually got it. Because really, if you're going to be waiting for all of that to live the life you really want to live, that you're missing out a massive chunk of your life.
I believe.
It's a really important point. Sorry, Erwin. It's
Yeah.
one of the things that I see us as coaches get sidetracked on is what the client thinks they want, which in my experience is less about what they want and more about how they think they can get what they think they want.
Yeah.
And part of our responsibility is to ask questions beyond that. To your question, well, what's important about that? If you had that, what would change? And if we can kind of skip over what they think they want to get towards there, well, I want to feel more fulfilled. Well, cool. Well, if that's the goal, we can look at how you think you can get there because there's other sub goals along the way. But let's not forget to also look at, well, what can you do today to feel more fulfilled?
Absolutely.
And then to have both of those in parallel.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, sorry, just coming from an energy point of view, working with universal laws, and then you're more of a, dynamic match to the very thing you do want, right? Because you're feeling good before you've even got there.
Yeah, it's really how you redefine, because what you need to do a lot with in coaching is redefining the goals that people have. Because losing weight at the end, that's why people get, once they got lost the weight, they gain the weight again. But
Yeah.
because the focus is different. It's like what you both said. It's about, once you have, what is the reason behind it that you want to lose weight? Once you have lost the weight, what do you want to feel? What's the feeling that you want? What do you want to do? Why is life going to be different? What's going to be around it? And that is what you, and then bring it back today. What can you already do today around this and feeling it? Because losing weight, you do that for a reason. What is that reason?
And that's exactly it. And that's when we go back to being inspired and being inspirational. That reason has to feel so inspiring to you, and to really kind of be on this planet and live the best life you can live, feeling as good as you can feel, as much as you can within the reality of the life we live in. That's got to be it. Surely that's surely the inspiration behind it, right? That's kind of what you would like to hope anyway. It's kind of like, you know, for me, this is embarrassing, but let's share this. When I was losing my weight, my goal was, this is really embarrassing, but my goal was, oh my God, wouldn't it, my dream of losing weight was, oh my God, it's going to be so cool when, just imagine, and this is the weird thing that the brain does, right? Just imagine if, you know, I don't know, something happens and there's a fire or something, and I've just got to run out of the house really quickly. God, just imagine if I could just easily slip on a pair of jeans because I'm slim enough. So whatever that is in inverted commas, right? Because I'm slim enough. Oh my God, that's amazing. I could just get up and slip into some jeans. That was my inspirational goal. And it was not because I could fit into jeans or whatever, because you don't have to be, you know, whatever size to fit into jeans. It was more about oh my God, I could easily, I wouldn't have to be thinking anymore about what I'm wearing. I wouldn't have to think, God, because then how I used to worry was, it's going to be hot this summer. Oh my God, what am I going to wear? Oh my God, you know, I don't know what I would wear. And I'd get stressed and I'd get worried and all of this kind of thing. So my goal really was about, oh my God, I'm going to feel so much easier, so much better. So all of that. It wasn't about what I'm going to look like. It was about, oh my God, I'm just going to feel relief. I'm going to feel at ease and more fulfilled, you know, because I feel not fulfilled because I've lost the weight, but I feel more fulfilled because I've taken a massive amount of worry and stress away from me.
Yeah, that let go of the burden that leads to that ease, and the freeing up of the energy from which, with ease, you can move towards those other things and bring them in. Hey, one place you were inspired early in the conversation was as you started to speak about hell yes.
Yeah.
What does that mean for you, and what is it about hell yes that, like, look at it, like, lights you up?
I just think and I've done it so often in the past, so hold my hands up here, but I just think we are so good at closing a hell yes down and living a life for other people. And then where is your help? Firstly, does anybody ever think, wow, what is my hell yes? What is hell yes? What's saying a yes to me? What is saying a yes to me? Am I authentically saying a yes to me, or am I living shoulds? Am I communicating in a way that I believe people will want me to communicate? Or am I being true to me? And that for me was really important. And I read, you know, a few years before I started coaching, I read The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, or it was around that. And that was written by Bronnie Ware, who was a hospice nurse in Australia. And she had gone around many, many hospices to do research on the top 5 regrets of the dying. And the top regret wasn't that they worked too hard, worked too long, none of that. The top regret was living life for other people's expectations. So they hadn't actually lived their life. They had amended it to live for other people's expectations. Now, for me, my take on that was, wow, that's pretty sad, because it's kind of like, then you come to the end of your life and you haven't actually lived your life. The life, I truly believe that you come back and you live other lives, but that's a different story. But in this life, this physical life right here, right now, you haven't lived it. You've lived it for other people's belief systems, other people's paradigms, the shoulds, the comparisons, the this, the that. But the truth of you and what feels, going back to emotions, what would feel really good for you, you've glided over. You've compromised because of certain things that you put way above you and you followed through on that. And I've done it. So this isn't me saying nobody should ever do that. Pardon the should. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it from experience. Man, it doesn't feel good. And it's living true to you and your hell yes. It would be really wonderful, maybe, if people could define for them with ease, God, yeah, you know what? If I could wave a magic wand, what would be my hell yes? It's not to say I can live it right now, and that's okay too. But it's kind of like, wow, I just wonder. I wonder, what if? Yeah, I just wonder.
I see people sometimes about the hell yes. I want to do the hell yes. But then see what is going to happen to my environment. Because if I'm going to start doing my hell yes, and what negative things could happen, and do I want those, and there's a lot of shoulds in there. But what could happen influencing on a relationship that you say, well, I do not want that relation to break, but if I want to go my hell yes, that could, like, it's a lot of things going to happen. So what would you say to people around that?
I really get that. I've been there with that one, Erwin. But okay, so think about it, right? So, there's a lot there, but think about it. So if a relationship was to break because you're following through, or you would like to follow through, so you've discussed it with your partner, this is what I would love to do, this feels really good to me, I'd love you to be on board, because obviously communication is key, right? I'm not saying just go off and, but communication is key. And I would really love it if you could support me in this, because it really feels good to me. It's kind of non-negotiable. I'd love to do it. And that partner was to say, well, for me, actually, no, that doesn't work for me. And that really doesn't. That's not my hell yes. And no. Then maybe with love, maybe you're both on different journeys at that point. Now, does that make it wrong? No. Does it mean the relationship is evolving? Yes. Does it mean it's evolving into something else? Yes. Is that something to be fearful of? A lot of people would be, yes. But then it comes down to trusting again, that feeling of, but this is my life. And if I don't follow through on it now, then when? Then actually when? And if I can say with love to that person, I know I've got to do this. Maybe we'll reconnect. Maybe we won't. I don't know. But it's all through love. Then if it was me, but it's me. Who am I? I would but I would do that.
Nice. I want to yes and to what was just said, because I think it's a place a lot of people go, and it becomes the story that holds us back. And your answer was really good. Firstly, the examples you gave before were really great questions that we can use, because I see a lot of people that have given up on the hell yes because life's got in the way, and actually thinking about it hurts. And so we don't look, we procrastinate, we ignore, and we pretend it doesn't matter. So there's all of those mechanisms that many of us are sort of actually employing at the moment. And what you did was to do two really powerful questions. One was, if you could wave a magic wand.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is like, just wonder, like, I wonder, what if?
Yeah.
I think these are non-committal questions. They're curious questions. And of course, we'll never find our hell yes if we never start to look. And often it's not what we think, because to your point, it's exactly that. It's not what we think. It's about starting to look at what we're feeling and what that hell yes is as we start to listen to ourselves. The next thing you started to do was to go, well, actually, we got to start looking, we got to start exploring, we got to start connecting, and we got to give ourselves permission to discover, rediscover, or deepen our connection with that hell yes. There can be little experiments, there can be doing little different things that actually aren't earth-shattering or changing the way that we live. And then you spoke about conversation and co-creation and discussion. Not forcing my hell yes onto the rest of the world, because as we know, when we force energy, it doesn't flow nicely. But actually from that place of inspired conversation, but also to recognize that when we start talking about our hell yes, we can also inspire the fears of others who have not yet looked for theirs. And so the element of compassion can come in, and all of this starts to happen before the scenario that we just discussed is. So not let the scenario or the fear of what might happen not to start the journey. So I wanted to highlight that because your questions are really brilliant.
But thank you. But what you just said as well is really, really important. I think sometimes as coaches, I think that, I don't know, sometimes, oh God, I don't know whether to say what I'm going to say, but sometimes I think we kind of do a disservice, okay, as in, this is where you are and this is the goal, right? And then it's goal oriented. We spoke about this earlier, and it's goal oriented, I think. And then a lot of people, especially, you know, if they're of that personality, like, you know, it depends on what personality profiling you're using, but you're a D or you're a red or whatever you are, and you're just heading towards it, and you're putting yourself under pressure because you're heading towards it, then as we know, that could easily lead to sabotage. And also as well, research has shown that more people than ever now are actually not even looking to set goals because they're too afraid that they won't actually ever get there. But the initial step of, like we were saying, curiosity, there's no pressure there, right? But it opens the doorway. Whereas I think sometimes when it's, this is the goal, and this is what I'm aiming for, and get me there, and or help me get me there, and if you don't get me there, I don't know what I'm going to do then. It's kind of like, wow, whoa, there's so much pressure that you've just put on yourself. And then you close the door, like you were saying, you kind of close the door. But curiosity opens the door. It's a high frequency. It's a lovely, talking about energy, it's a high frequency. But curiosity is a lovely thing that opens the door to, wow, yeah, you know what? I don't know what, actually, and I don't know the ending here, but I'm just curious to know with kind of where my imagination's going, or where my feelings are going, where my gut's going, and I'm not going to right now put barriers in the way of what does it mean for this person, or what would it mean for the job I'm in right now, or anything like that, because we don't want to sabotage other areas either, right here, right now. You're just being curious, and then you're being kind to yourself. You're allowing the whole of you to come into it, and the brain's not going to close you down because you're not saying, this is what I am going to do, and I'm going to come out of I'm going to go into panic zone. That's what I'm going to do. Well, you're not, because you're in curiosity. And I just think if people could allow themselves that kindness of being curious and just start the journey that way, rather than somebody's doing this, so I want to do it too, or this could be the next progression. Well, how does it feel to you? Not ideal, but you know what? It's going to get me to that place. And then, and how does that place feel? Well, it's part of the job, you know? Well, that's not your hell yes. Why don't you just be open and curious as to what maybe there could be if you just allowed yourself, your imagination, to run with it?
That's what they call in business, certainly, the brainstorming. But that's in business they call that brainstorming. Just like let's just go look at everything that is possible.
Yeah.
I use the word because some people would say curiosity. What is it? But it's basically a brainstorming where you said together, as you internal said to your brain, let's just go ahead and just go for it.
And when you just let that happen, whichever term, but whenever you let that happen, there's no fear, right? There's no fear because it's just,
there's no limitation.
Who knows? So there's no limitation. There's nothing then shutting you down.
As long as we're, and I'm speaking because I can hear some of the audience and I can picture some people in how they respond energetically to brainstorming. It's the question that we start with, because a lot of people start brainstorming from what will we do, not what could we do, or what might we do, or whatever other question, but that curious, that open question to go broad, to go wide. It doesn't even need to make sense. It doesn't even need to be realistic or doable, and actually letting go of those things gives us permission. This is where working with a coach or a facilitator can be really useful, so that when our default strategies kind of come in, we can go, yeah, let's come back to choosing in a second. Let's come back to filtering in a minute. What else? What does this inspire as you look at these things that are here? And then to go, well, I was going to say big, but why stop there?
No, for sure, right? But, and also just allowing yourself or just knowing, just being aware that you can be really curious And the brain is going to come in pretty quickly and say, oh yeah, okay, right, but where's that going to get you then? And it's a question of, okay, well, no, I hear you, but I'm going to park you and I'm going to carry on with the curiosity, because I hear what you're saying. And yes, there's some kind of logic to that, but you can't allow the curiosity to expand with logic, right? It's got to be beyond that. So it's parking that and saying, no, that's okay, that's cool. But for now, I'm in the frequency or the aim of curiosity, and allowing the magic of that to happen. We don't allow enough magic in our lives. And that's not waiting for magic to happen. That's about us feeling as good as we can feel, as open as we can feel, as I love the term, excited anticipation, right? That kind of curiosity, excited anticipation. You don't know even what of, but that's the magic. But we don't. We worry, we fret, we're stressed, we're anxious, we're all of that. And then the true magic is what you can allow yourself to feel. You don't have to wait for the outside world to make it magical for you. You could be way too long if you do that, right? So
I believe an important word there for the brain is saying there is no commitment. What we're going to do now for the brain, say there's no commitment, because the brain at that moment is going to switch down and that's, oh, it's no commitment, so I'm going to let to go.
For sure. And then people may say, oh, okay, well, God, there's no commitment, wow, well, I don't know where that takes me then, because there's no commitment. And it's kind of like, commit to the curiosity, right? And allow yourself, just go out, because that might be slightly weird for you, that I'm asking, or whoever's asking you, to be curious and commit to that. And then it's kind of trusting, isn't it? It's trusting that facilitator or that person that you may be working alongside, and you're holding hands together through the journey and all of this. And it's kind of, well, no, just, give it a try. What have you got to lose, right? Give it a try and, allow your life to expand. We're not here to contract. We're here to expand. And we all know that fear leads to contraction. Well, kind of allow curiosity to lead to expansion. And who knows, right? Who knows? That's the excitement, if you allow it.
Oh, yes. Wow. Sandra,
Yes,
if people are more curious, if they're inspired by a conversation today, how can they connect with you?
So they can contact me on my website, which is sandrastocks.co.uk. I'm on Spotify, on Living a Hell Yes podcast. They can buy the book if they want. They don't have to. That's not me plugging it, so they don't even have to. They can go on my Instagram. My Instagram handle is @SandraStocksCoach. And if they want to subscribe to the other podcast, which is Sandra in Your Pocket, Channeling Wisdom, they can do that through the website.
Great. Well, Sandra, thank you very much for this inspiring conversation that we had. So thank you very much for that. And everybody else, thank you very much for listening in. And until the next episode, take care and be inspired.
Thanks for tuning in to The Coaching Edge. Until next time, keep coaching and keep growing.